Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It's August 26th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and this was a crazy day. I'm sure there's probably maybe some kind of news item or something that came out that sparked this rally. Maybe it was just the fact that we are pushing the new highs and people are getting excited and jumping in. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. All that matters is that prices shot up. And I mean, we're just a couple of days ago we were talking about 3,400. Now we're looking at 3,500. We're within 20, little more than 20 points from hitting the 3,500. So this market is just extremely bullish right now. So my guess is it's going to continue to be this way up until election date. They're going to keep this thing propped up. So no sitting president's ever going to let the market die while they're trying to get reelected, in my opinion. So I think we could continue to see the market at least stay at these heights. It may not keep trading up at this at this rate, but I would expect that we're not going to really see any big sell-offs either. So you never know, though. Don't go with what you think. Always go with what you see. But that's my guess as of right now. But anyway, let's talk about it. What looked like was going to be a very flat day to a maybe slightly up day. This is what you were looking at early, was the sideways stuff, but it had a slightly, the brown channel was really more accurate, and it had the slight uptrend to it. And then suddenly we broke out into this blue one and just took off like a rocket up. And you could see that trend line, what looked like was going to just be a little short-term channel in there early on, turns out to be just a bigger, steeper blue channel, two-tiered channel at that. So within that, this is what really sparked it, the move when we broke out here. And you'll notice I don't mark anything up here. When you start to get this far away from the EMA and this strongly, you got to be really careful entering up here. Technically, you could enter any one of these pullbacks to the trend line that gives you a good signal bar. I didn't mark any of them because they're very aggressive trades. When you get that far away from the EMA for that long, anytime you enter, it's dangerous. But notice if you entered any of these pullbacks, here's one, here's another one. That one didn't have a very good signal bar, but here's one. And then after that, you get the break. So you don't really get as long as you bought any of those signal bars that pull back to the trend line, you were okay all the way to the top. And then you get the break. There's no setup right here, so then you get the break. And we didn't quite even get back to the original trend line here. Of course, you figure you're going to get a break and a couple of legs up trying to make a new high here. But this thing just finally works back over to the trend line, and once it hits it, boom. And that's what I always tell people when you study your charts. Look and see where the big moves generate from. Notice you got one from here, one from here, one from down here, and these are all key entry points. So if you really study your charts and you look where these big moves generate at, you'll be able to, it helps you to learn to find these entry points. And notice we have a big move down here, big move down here. And actually when we bounced down here, we came back to this original trend channel line and bounced there and took off. And we closed almost on a high today. We closed less than 20 points away from hitting 3,500. And just yesterday, we were looking at just barely above 3,400. We actually traded up, but just a couple of days ago, we were talking about prices right in here, bouncing around 3,400 for a little bit, and now we're already looking at 3,500. So it's a very bullish market right now, and so just keep that in mind. And you'll see, though, as we back out here and talk about the trades, there's just not a lot of them today because it just didn't give you a good chance to enter. Again, as I talk about this short-term trend, you could enter these. They're aggressive, though, so I didn't mark them, but we'll kind of talk about that again. let me back out here. 7 o'clock comes right in here, and we're just kind of going sideways. I marked this trade right here. Notice that we're working up, and you get a break, and you're just kind of chopping sideways. But notice we tested it once, we tested it twice, we tested it 3 times, but you don't get a good setup there, and then you get a high or low right here. I would think that we'd probably try to push on up to the highs, so I marked that trade. It looks a little congestive, but there is a failed second entry short there, and generally that's what it takes. And notice how once we broke higher, it pushed right up real quickly, and that's what generally will happen. So I marked that one. You could almost argue for that to be green. So generally I'm going to tell most any of you newer traders, don't try to enter in tight congestion like that. But you can see here how the EMA is pointing up slightly, and the price action is mostly above it here, and it is pointing up. And you probably wouldn't have the brown channel yet. You're probably still looking at the more flatter stuff, but we just came off the lows, and so we're probably going to the highs. And generally you don't pay a whole lot of attention to second entries and failures and stuff in here either, so that's just another reason to maybe stay out of that. I marked it, but it's real close to being green. You could probably argue for it to be green because it is congestive there. Then we work down, we come back down here, and that's when I drew the brown channel. And when you drag it up, actually you probably could have got it from here and drug it down, but it really is kind of, you've gotten your touches on both sides, and it's bounced both times and gone in the other direction. So you got a little bit of information by here to know, hey, that maybe this brown one's in play. We got to see if we get through here, and of course we do. And at that point, you want to look for this brown one to be in play. But we're working down here. You get a first entry, and then you get a second entry. That's also a second entry short, but it's not a very good signal bar. But just the fact that it's a failed second entry long and a second entry short, I like it. And you can see it drop down here pretty quickly. And where does it bounce? Right here. And this is actually a second entry long. Notice that swing high. The reason I'm calling that a swing high, technically if you look for a break higher, but we traded up here and then back down, and so you got a little 2-bar matching high. I'm pushing it there, but you can still clearly see there's 2 legs back down to this trend line. 1 leg correction, 2nd leg. And so I'm still treating this like a second entry, and it looks like a failed second entry long too. So well, it is a failed second entry because you're moving down first entry and then second entry. So hopefully you can see that. And it bounces right off that trend line. Nice bullish bar. It's an inside bar, but it's got matching lows. I like going long there. The better play is the blue one. You get a high or low. Comes back and tests the EMA in the midline. And your hope is it's going to go all the way up to the brown, but at the minimum we're probably looking at it to go here. And you can see it just wedging in between that brown midline and this shorter term trend line. And of course the trend line wins out, breaks through the midline, and runs on up to the trend channel line. But you needed to be careful right in here. I'd just sit tight, and you just really don't get a chance to ride this up. And you don't want to be going long way up here right into this channel. Notice I do mark this one right here because we're just kind of working sideways. You can see that little congestion area, little range, and you test it a couple of different times here, and you get a nice little small bar. And you're just looking, the main thing is you got to have room to get out before getting back to these highs, and definitely before here. And this is one of those surprise ones that if you catch this, it just takes off. I marked this one because it's a failed second entry short, but I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not going to go long right into that trend channel line, even though this short-term trend line is in play. And really you could argue that this other trend line is still in play. I wouldn't call that a convincing close outside of it. So And so with that short trap right there, and this is why you don't short these kind of moves, because it went one tick lower and took off. So that's definitely aggressive, but if you got in here, you'd catch a runner on this, and you could ride this all the way up. But again, once you draw this trend line, every time you get a pullback, you could have entered here. I wouldn't enter on this one, but you could have entered here, here, maybe here, and even here. This one actually breaks lower and turns and goes back out. It's an engulfing bar. And if you just get your equal distance, you could find that up there and know exactly where to exit. It exits to the tick. Then we sell off, and you get a first entry. There's a higher low here, but it's right into the EMA, and we're not back to the trend line. I think it's a little aggressive, and then you can see we just start going sideways. But I didn't draw my line here. You can see that support across there, and really you'd want this a little higher. You'd want it right in here. And so we tested it. We made the low, we come back, we test it, we trade up, we come back down again, and then the second time. So it's really a double, it's almost a double test right there, but we're not back to the trend line. So I'd really count that all as one test. So you make the low, you make a test, a double test, bounces off the trend line, the support resistance line. We're still right there at the EMA. Just go long right there. You get a higher low here, but not a very good setup. Then you get a failed second entry short right here. Again, a very small bar. There's only 4 ticks in that bar. It's very low risk for a failed second entry short. And notice how it shoots off again. The smarter traders are waiting for more evidence that we're not stuck in this little trading range here. And the bias is up, so we're looking for it to fail out the low side and go higher, and that's what happens right here. And off it goes. And again, we turn off the midline, and you can see that trend line clearly. You might could argue this is the trend line. That looks correct too. I played it off this one originally, but I still don't think you want to enter over here. If you were, that would have been the only place you could have entered. And it's not a failed second entry because you're making higher lows here every single time. So you can't really make the argument that's a second entry. It's kind of congestive looking. So I don't think it's worth entering. It would have worked. And that's this is what happens. You finally get the courage to enter up here, and then boom, it's going 100 miles an hour in the other direction. And that's the danger of entering up there. We're working down. You make a new low first entry. And there's actually a second entry right there, but you don't get a good setup. But then it breaks higher and turns back down. And so I still like entering right there, the continuation, because you get a little long trap. So I guarantee you trap some longs there, and it quickly drops down. And I marked this long too, because now you got your break, a move to a new low, and you get another little push down. Notice those lows. And it fails, and you got plenty of room back to the EMA for just an easy scalp. And so I kind of like that, just to scalp. And if you catch that, you might could have ridden it on out into the close, at least until you started going sideways up there. And as you can see, as big as today was as far as rallying, there just weren't that many trades because it's so dangerous to enter something like this. I would call every one of these aggressive up through here, but if you recognize, I mean, this is a strong, when you don't get any corrections that are more than a few ticks and they end up being stems, that's a strong trend. But until you really could find this blue channel, you don't know what the target is up here. The only thing that you could have used for a target is measure this right here, and then from there. So that would give you confidence to maybe ride this to here. But from there on, unless you can find this blue channel, which is really, you might could say, hey, this looks like a midline here. But it really was hard to find it because there's nothing over here previously. And so you don't want to risk saying, hey, maybe that's a midline. You can tell in the end that's what it turns out to be, because it turns down to the tick, and then you can see it playing both sides. But at this point, you don't really have that luxury. So that would be all that you'd have for a possible target right there. And past that, it's no man's land. I mean, there's nothing even to look back to, because it's all-time highs. So it's really kind of a unique day. I had a couple people email me and say, how do you get into this? I'm missing all this move. And you just have to unless you're going to do like I told you, wait for a pullback to this EMA, and you know you're trading aggressively, then you just have to sit here and watch it. I mean, honestly, I sat here and watched it too, thinking I wish I'd have found a way to, because if you weren't in down here, you weren't in. And even if you were in here, you might have exited right in here because of the trend channel line. So there's just no way to really get this other than that last aggressive trade, and then all of these are super aggressive. It's just not smart to enter that far away from the EMA, although you do have a very strong trend. You do have this trend line working up. So if anybody did take these, understanding that they're very risky, I'm not going to fault you, because with with great risk comes great rewards, basically. So that's what it takes to get in some of these trades. That's why I like these failed breakouts. Just like right here, you can see all that support and it fails out this bottom side. Those will often be important lows, or if it happens at the highs, important highs. And you can see how important that low was right there. I can show you that just go study charts. Just like right here, when that failed out that low side, that was the low of the day. And it was an important low. It wasn't as important as this one, because that's where it really shot off from right there. So, but I like taking risk on these kind of trades where you get these failed break lowers or a failed break out the high side. At the time, that was a short-term important high, that one that failed up the upside right here, because you got a nice move back down. That doesn't look like much at all compared to this, but if you really look at it, 34.47 or something, all the way down to 34.40. That's a 7-point move, which that's a pretty good move on for one trade in the ES on in a range day. And that could have been the high of the day, and we could have had a move like this all the way down. But just pay attention to those failed breakouts, because they do often become important highs or lows for the day that lead to big moves. And they're one of my favorite trades. And here's another one right here, same thing. Let me back out where you can see it a little better. Notice we're just kind of going sideways here, and I probably wouldn't go beyond having that right here. And then that fails out the bottom, and that's, look at that move afterward. That's another one of those important lows. And I can show those to you. You can just go look at charts and see them over and over and over. And I talk about those a lot in past chart lessons, so just pay attention to them. But anyway, I hope you had a good trading day today. If you found this hard to trade, even though it was a strong trend, don't worry about it. It was a hard, strong trend to trade, because it didn't give you many opportunities. We didn't come back to this trend line until in here, and then it got a little bit easier again. But for the most part, the move was almost over. We still had this nice little last move up before we sold off. But this was not an easy, strong trend to trade, because it just did not give you many entry opportunities without being a very aggressive trader. And that's pretty hard for most of you. And I just noticed that this thing is not, my screen is not full here again. It's gotten off again. So this is probably not going to be in 1080, I'm guessing. Anyway, I don't know how that happened. I just noticed it. I thought I had it locked where it wouldn't do that anymore. But also, one other quick thing, if you're a member of our premium membership on the website, I know that you've been getting a couple of extra emails each day. The last couple of days, there's some kind of little bug in the email notification. I apologize for spamming you. I'm trying to get that bug worked out, but it's been very elusive. And it goes away, and then all of a sudden it shows back up again. So I'm trying to figure it out. I got some people helping me with it, but hopefully I'll get that figured out. And if it's bugging you, you can go into your user account and turn off the notifications completely. And if you really can't figure it out, just send me an email and I'll do it for you. But try to do it on your own, because I don't want to get 100 emails of 100 different people asking me to turn theirs off. But hopefully I'll have it fixed here in a day or so, and it won't be a problem going forward. But until we get it fixed, my apologies for spamming you guys, because I definitely spammed you the last 2 days, and it wasn't on purpose. It's some kind of bug in the email notification. So I may just turn it off completely, and you may not get any notifications for a couple of days. Just know that I post that around 9:30 to 9:45 every day, and you could just go look for it. And that might solve the whole problem, and that may be what I do. So anyway, until I get it worked out, we'll come up with some kind of fix. So I'm going to wrap it up. This is Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.